right, folks, welcome back to Psyched About UFOs. I'm your host, Dr. Tim Brigham. Thanks for joining us this week. I am a psychologist, got a PhD in psychology from the University of Georgia, and have been interested in UFOs for about 35 years since I spent some of my early years in a UFO hotspot back in the 1980s and 1990s, that being Gulf Breeze, Florida. Yeah, so this week, I know we've got Jeff Knox coming on. We're going to continue our panel discussion. I've got a few things here written down to talk about, but first let me try to bring up Jeff and test his audio. Hey Jeff, how's it going, man? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. How you doing?
Good.
Good deal. Good deal.
Rocking the new microphone.
Yeah. I was going to ask you how did is this your first time using it?
I used it on a Zoom for Jack Brewer's research group last night.
Okay. I can tell it sounds the audio sounds better. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, right on, man. So what's I don't have anything too specific for this week other than kind of some general stuff. I was going to see first what you had, and I had a couple of minor things written down, but anything that's captured your attention over the past?
It's been a fairly slow UFO week, I think. You know, we didn't get any more government pursuit releases today or last week. You know, we had more Bigelow's podcast. He had Brandon Fugel on this week, and I guess that's a part one, and so they're gonna have a part two next week. But yeah, aside from that, the only thing that really kind of note was there's a couple of polls that came out of kind of about beliefs in UFOs and where America is with things, and it seems to be in the last couple of years, people thinking that they're alien has actually gone down a little bit. From the peak of a few years ago.
Yeah, the one, if you're talking about the thing I saw, they were given, I think, like what was it, that in terms of the number of people who actually thought it was mysterious was above 50%, but the number of people that thought it was in some way extraterrestrial or something was something like, I think, 40%. I'm just kind of pulling that out of my memory, but is that what you were looking at?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact numbers. I believe there was also a Gallup poll that also just came out, and Steve Long had shared a thing from it, and it pretty much, if you are a woman, you slightly believe in that they're alien more than men. If you're the ages 30 to 39, you slightly believe more than the other age categories that UFOs might be alien. If you're non-college educated, you slightly believe more that they might be alien. And if you are in the eastern part of the U.S., you slightly believe they're alien more than people on the West Coast.
Yeah, and what was the peak? You said it had kind of come down from the peak. How much of a drop was it over what period of time?
The drop wasn't a huge amount. Like if you look at like a chart, it looked mostly level with just like a little bit of a downward trend. I think this was a different poll though than the Gallup one. I think that was like a Trendex or something like that.
Okay.
And again, you have to wonder, like, how big is their sample size? Who are they actually talking to? Because I think that same poll was talking about Gen Z people and like what they believe in aliens.
Okay. Yeah, and of course how they're finding these people and all that kind of stuff, of course, as well, right? But yeah. I'm sorry, were you gonna? I didn't mean to cut you off if you were.
No, that's those are basically the UFO news items that kind of stuck out to me this week. Like I said,
there's some interesting stuff I think we could say about that, about those surveys, but we can come back to that, but also the Bigelow podcast. I haven't watched any of those yet. You say you've listened to them, or were they anything that was news really, or was it just kind of as usual stuff? Any breaking stuff from the Bigelow camp over there?
Not really. I mean, like I've listened to them, and it's pretty much stuff we've already known. For example, like in this recent one, Fugel said something about Skinwalker Ranch that I found a little odd. I'm not sure if he'd mentioned it before, but he had explained how when he was looking to buy the ranch, he was a skeptic. He wasn't a believer.
Right.
He was a skeptic. He didn't think any of that stuff was going on, and that he was actually looking to purchase the ranch as like a Boy Scout camp.
Yeah.
And like, to me, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you even be looking at a famous paranormal hotspot, buying it from a paranormal billionaire, if you just thought it would be a good Boy Scout camp location?
Yeah. I don't know if what the overlap between paranormal, tourist hotspot and Boy Scout campsite is, but I would think even monetarily there'd be some different, needs, and I don't know. That seems a little bit of a
I mean, a Boy Scout thing would be, I mean, you basically make no money on that, right? Like, just be like a donation thing, like where you let camp people stay on it or whatever. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's the rumor is he paid $500,000 for Skinwalker Ranch when he bought it back in
really.
2016.
I wonder what comparably property in that area without this kind of mythology behind it would go for. That would be an interesting question.
Probably not that much. I don't know.
I
mean, it's a pretty rural area. Like,
how big is the property? Do you have any idea? I don't even know.
I don't know in numbers. Like I've been there many times, so like it's pretty much like, if you've seen the show, there's like that mesa, that cliff there. Like they have like basically that cliff side of the mesa up to the road where there's like a road that comes in front of the property and a fence. It's not like it's actually not as big as one might think. It's probably as big as like the middle school grounds like next to my house here. It's not like
a few acres, nothing crazy, but
it's not crazy. It's and there's a little creek that runs through it kind of by the mesa, but it's mostly just like an open kind of like field kind of area that.
Right. I wonder at what point did he supposedly decide that bringing Boy Scouts on site would not be, what they're going to use the property for. But
as he points out now, like they don't let anyone on without signing like these kind of like waivers, these health waivers, because they're supposedly so scared of people being injured or something on the site that everybody has to sign, like these waivers and stuff. Like, we're not going to sue you if you get a paranormal hitchhiker that attaches to you and goes home, or I don't know. Like, I mean, you can get injured anywhere you go. You can get injured out on a ranch, just walking around the desert. Like, it's hot out there. You can get heat stroke. You can,
absolutely,
snakes. There's all sorts of ways to get injured out there. I'm just not convinced it's going to be anything supernatural that injures you.
Yeah, true. And furthermore, if you had a location with a supposed poltergeist hitchhiking, would simply having someone sign a disclaimer that I don't hold you responsible for having me come here and get haunted for the rest of my life by this haint or whatever it is, I don't seem like that would be kind of a weak release of liability for having people come onto your haunted place. But that's
And why would the things end at their borderline, right? Like, why wouldn't I got sick or all these other I've never been across their fence, but I spent a lot of time on their fence line. And it's like the things that are happening in Skinwalker Ranch should be happening really to anyone in that entire area. It shouldn't be localized to where their property border is part of the county. So.
And didn't they have a guy that was found that committed that ended his own life out there at the ranch, like right outside the gate or right across the fence or something? And
that was like a year or two ago. Like, there was a guy that like he killed himself, and he was found by, I believe, the tribal police kind of near where Skinwalker Ranch is.
Yeah, if I understood that correctly, the finding of the body was belayed by the fact that they were filming for this History Channel TV show and didn't want to allow authorities on to. I could be incorrect about that. I'm going from memory, but
that sounds familiar. And I mean, how crazy is that? Priorities, right?
Yeah.
You got a History Channel show we need to film here. dead bodies. Bleh.
Yeah, look for him later. Somebody had mentioned here in the chat that Stephen Greenstreet had posted yesterday or today his questions that were put out regarding the supposed White House UFO Council. And you may have a better grasp of, I mean, basically the response that I think he got was that it's not an official body. Is that what you gathered from what he posted?
So what he posted, the response seems to be essentially what we already knew about this, is that there is what's called the UAP government advising body. That is an official like body within the government, and it's like the ODNI, I guess, is headlining it. And then there's what Avi Loeb has, which is he calls the Scientific Advisory Board. That's not an official government body. And they pointed this out before, the official government body will consult with various independent organizations, people like Avi Loeb, Science Advisory Council, probably, things like Soul, and some of these various other, Disclosure Foundation, maybe, who knows. And so there is official government body. Avi Loeb's thing is not that. And so far, nobody can prove that anyone actually asked Avi to launch this in the first place.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Did he just misunderstand something, just talk to somebody about UFOs and thought they were asking him, and so he kickstarted this up, and now now they consult with the government. But that seems to be. Yeah, but it's not official, which means they have no clearances to actually look at any science data. Yeah. And if you look at what they're doing, there's supposed to be a science advisory board, but he's spending all his time talking about whistleblowers instead of the actual science.
Yeah.
In fact, he outright said this week, I believe he said, why do we even need all this science and data? The whistleblowers can already provide it to us. Like, it's because they can't, because they're not whistleblowers.
Yeah, it's and I got a little bit of heat for saying a similar thing earlier about Gary Nolan, I think, but obviously, as we've discussed before, being intelligent and educated and having even a prestigious position at Harvard or Stanford doesn't prevent you from seemingly being kind of a fantasist about UFOs. I mean, to a large degree, it's not even just on one of the the comments these people have made, that it's kind of repeatedly these even getting to the when I hear you people talking about, well, we need to try to summon UFO orbs and meditate on a beach and see if we can pull them in, or I mean, it's ridiculous. I can't take that seriously regardless of who you are. But
Nolan even say something once along the lines of, like, you don't actually need evidence because, like, you can intuit, what's going on with the. It's like, no, that's not really how science works, though, dude.
Yeah, and even and it's obvious to you, and I think a lot of us, right? How many times in science and in life in general, right, that sometimes the obvious thing is clearly only obvious in retrospect, right? That you wouldn't have assumed that explanation before the research that showed it. Sometimes the obvious is clearly incorrect, right? I don't know. Somebody had asked in a tweet, I think, to what's that astronomer, astrophysicist name that was critiquing that recent stuff on the transients? Adam.
Frank.
Yeah.
I just got done reading his new Big Think article from today, right before I popped on the stream here. It's a great article. I highly recommend people read. That he kind of goes over to a couple of the kind of rebuttals to Beatrice Villaro's Vasco project.
Yeah,
and he essentially points out that, and I pointed this out too. One of the rebuttals is actually it's not by people that are biased against UAP. It's actually the scientists are actually pro UFO like people. It's people like Kevin Newth from SCU and various other people that are actually pro UFO studies. And so you can't argue that these people are biased and they're just trying to debunk. And they basically found that one of the big arguments was people going around arguing 22 sigma result showing that it's got to be reflected objects because it's in the Earth shadow. Well, when they went to verify the data, that result basically was totally eliminated. There's no differentiation there. And when it came down to the claim that the results happen in the Earth shadow, so they can't be or they disappear in their shadow. So am I flipping that around? Anyways, one of those because the sun can't reflect like that.
Yeah.
You don't get more.
Right. Gotcha.
Turns out that entire result effectively came down to only a single plate.
Huh. Interesting.
And it doesn't really hold up. And when you actually change the your priors, about what you're assuming for the calculations,
right,
it completely eliminates it as well. And so as it stands, they've shown nothing. And several scientists have credibly essentially debunked it and pointed out serious like methodological flaws in like the way they're doing their study and how it essentially amounts to circular reasoning on the part of people like Beatrice.
Yeah. And immediately there's this outpouring of how can you be so mean as to criticize this poor woman or whatever the kind of the you're coming from a what was it? Someone told Adam or the guy was it Frank or what was his name?
Adam Frank.
So, he's coming from a non legitimate, what was it? I don't know. There was some kind of about his motivation, right? You're not coming from an honest place about it's just this kind of whining about any kind of criticism or critical questioning becomes, and as has been pointed out, there's that kind of backlash against people that ask critical questions just leads to people not wanting to bother to ask critical questions because they see what's what happens when you do.
And as he says, is like, and if you don't have to approach UFOs this way, but if you're not, don't call it science. If you don't want criticism and people to like, rebut some of these scientific claims and approach it scientifically, then don't pretend you're interested in UFO science and just accept it's a religion that you're more interested in.
Right.
Which is fine. If that's the approach you want to take to it. But just
absolutely.
don't pretend it's science if you're not willing to, do that.
Yeah, and I had, I kind of snarkily mentioned that what was it? Beatrice, I guess is her name. She had posted to some guy on Twitter, and he posted a screenshot of her sending him DMs asking for him to remote view some location for her. Or
Tiny Klaus.
Yeah. It's just how seriously can you take this. Obviously there's more than an objective scientist involved when they're DMing people asking for help remote viewing. I don't know. It just
I actually had that message again already open on my window here. She's like, Klaus, saw your recent post. Need to ask you a discreet question. Could your wife help me remote target a place I'm failing to relocate? Possible crash UFO in a forest here in Sweden. Please keep confidential. And so here she was asking randos on UFO Twitter to help remote view her UFO research for her.
Yeah.
And she's also involved in that Baltic Sea anomaly bullshit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She's hooked up with that Dennis Asperger,
that guy.
Whatever you want to call him, guy. And that's just so stupid. It's a freaking rock. And it's only a couple 100 feet down, for Christ's sake. Like, go look at the rock.
Yeah, I think, and this is where I kind of got away from what I was trying to say earlier with like same thing I think with Gary Nolan, where these people have pre-existing beliefs in something extraordinary, in this case UFOs as space aliens or interdimensional whatever, because of pre-existing childhood dreams or or whatever kinds of personal stuff, right? And then as I guess the question that the person asked, how does that differ from, I mean, you'd think at working at Stanford or Harvard, having a decent reputation for science, they don't behave this way in regards to most other things, I would hope, right? But I don't know, right? Is it just a window into how they behave in general, or is it just with UFOs they can be so far out there and zany and make all these kinds of claims? Or
I sure hope to God, for the sake of Gary Nolan's students at Harvard, that he is not like this when he's teaching,
immunology or whatever, right?
Whatever else he teaches there, because holy crap, it's weird because, like you say, the very, very, very bright people will sometimes just like when it comes to a certain topic, it's like they have a blind sight and will just like be complete wacky, Looney Tunes. People, motivated reasoning is a strong factor in why people do what they do. And
Yeah, absolutely.
And in
Yeah,
people like Beatrice's case, I think part of the reason is as fascinating as I pointed out originally, like I find this search for transients fascinating. I think that's really interesting. I simply stated that I'm not sure how it connects to the UFO topic, and I'm not sure I see the connection to like the July 1952 stuff personally. That actually got me a block. Like, how dare I? Like, I was actually praising her work, just not some of the conclusion, but that was worthy of a block. But oh God, my brain just went completely blank.
No worries, no worries. It's frequently that way, right? We want people to pay attention to this supposedly, right? Or we want serious scientists or serious people, and then when they do, there's how dare you, you're making fun of me, or how could you ask that and be so dumb as to or you remember what you were going to say?
Yeah, so the point I was going to make was like, as interesting as the research was, it would not have got the attention of popular culture. She would not have got her 15 minutes of fame, and she would have not have got any of these media appearances that she's gotten had she not attached it to the UFO topic.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, I think that allowed her to promote and get her work out there more than she would have been able to if she approached it strictly, more scientifically. And I think that's possibly, one of the motives, here is that, even scientists like recognition. It'd be nice to get your 15 minutes of fame. And if you're not going to get it in your own field, why not attach yourself to something like UFOs that will get you?
Heck, Avi even likes to hang photos of himself all over the background of his office, right? Every time we see a picture of Avi in his office, he's got 8 photos of himself in the.
All him.
Yeah,
Like that just seems vain to me.
It's bizarre. Yeah,
I don't have any photos of myself hung up anywhere.
Right. Yeah, and they're not even. It didn't seem like they were like photos of him with someone else. They were like posed photos of him in his own office, right? Like Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Lou's been asking about the national press thing.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't see the talk, but I did see that it happened.
Yeah, I've only seen some of the clips that were shared by like Stephen Greenstreet, for example. And this is, of course, about the Wall Street Journal article that he wrote about why these people in government kind of seem to believe in UFOs. And that's where he broke the story supposedly about the Yankee Blue, which was fake documents about UFOs and stuff that was used to kind of haze or trick, people in the military. And one of the other big claims he made in that story was that the Robert Salas Malmstrom UFO shutdown case was actually the result of them doing EMP testing to check the hardening of the silos and stuff, and that's what caused it. Which I actually did not agree with, and kind of posted a bunch of original documents and kind of debunked that aspect of the story immediately.
Yeah, this was that they were doing like an an electromagnetic test of the bunker or the bait. Is that what? Say that one more time.
And they were doing an EMP test of to see how that would affect the launch control system or whatever. Okay. And that supposedly this test also created kind of yellow, orange, kind of reddish orange, kind of glows, in the sky as well. And that's what people were seeing as the UFOs. Only when you look into it, they did do such tests years later in a small scale test system and completely different and non active locations. They weren't doing it at active silos. They did it in a testing range, on a thing. And so that part didn't make any sense. But
could again be, kind of maybe, the similar to what happened with they argue with the old Roswell stuff, where you had people seeing crash test dummies 10 years later and then somehow in their heads conflated that with the 47 thing. I don't know, but yeah, it's and what's the reason they can't find any documentation of any of this either? I mean, I know that's been kind of a question, right, in terms of finding something releasable by FOIA about a hazing program or
yeah, that's the thing we don't really have, and that's something even skeptics have been critical of that article. It's we don't really have any evidence of this hazing program, right? We haven't seen any of these so-called hazing documents. Stephen Greenstreet has, apparently, but we haven't seen any of these hazing documents. And I wonder how much Like I don't doubt that such a program existed. I wonder how much you can attribute to such a hazing program, as it was called.
Yeah. Speaking of, let's see if I can make this pop on the screen. Greenstreet said he had seen some of those, and that some of these the carrot UFO photos that were in my recollection was these were kind of what 2010-ish CGI photos that were on the internet, and they supposedly somehow were in also in the Yankee Blue packet. I don't know.
Yeah, carrot was a big hoax that came out around that time period. And Greenstreet did point out that I believe like that one, the picture you've got up, was one of the ones that he supposedly saw in the packet. And of course, these are supposedly created. There's even a credible claim by the actual artist that created the things in the first place that were basically stolen from her and like used in this hoax.
Really? Okay.
So, yeah.
I didn't know about that part. So the person that made them, they weren't made specifically as a hoax or anything like that. They were just made as a
like it was just and I guess some of the writing may have actually came from a Dell like Alienware like advertising campaign.
All right.
Earlier on, like in 2007, 2008 or something like that. It had been like repurposed. So it's so she wasn't directly involved with like the hoax. Somebody basically appropriated her work and used it for the carrot hoax.
Gotcha.
We still don't know who did it, but and of course there's still some people that believe the carrot stuff's real.
Yeah.
I believe that all popped up again because wasn't it Ross Coulthart recently promoting the carrot stuff again?
I think so. I think I did see him. And isn't there some kind of connection to some of the Lonnie Zamora stuff somehow? Like one of the symbols or something in the carrot documents was something from one of the Socorro drawings or something, I think, or I seem to recall there was some.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't recall that part. It's just it was weird, kind of a writing, kind of like a stylistic kind of alien writing that was all over the thing. I don't specifically remember the Socorro symbol though.
Yeah, just it would be certainly, good and interesting to find out, to see some kind of documentation about. But then again, I mean, a hazing program, how many documents do you keep about a hazing program, right? That's not something you probably want to keep a lot of records about if you're running a hazing program. So understandably, there might not be a lot in terms of documentation about the whole thing, but
yeah. And honestly, even if they did do that, people always make the argument is like, well, they're not going to admit it because that's going to make them look bad and all this other stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't personally buy those kind of arguments. Like, the government does all sorts of crazy things. Like,
they have very little shame. I don't think they'd mind admitting some of this stuff.
Yeah. So it's I don't know if you are able to pull up that clip that Lou was sharing from the Joe Beckman speech.
Let's see where. Oh, it's in the. Where is it? Where did he send it to? Did he send it to Twitter or something? Or
yeah.
I don't think I. Oh wait, I got it now. Let's see. Try to pull it up here if I can. Share.
And it relates to something Mr. Rubio recently said in an interview, which.
All right, let's see if I can. Hopefully the audio will play.
We started out with a simple question. Why did so many defense officials believe their own Pentagon was hiding a secret alien program? It was something we had heard again and again. And we started to wonder, maybe they could be right. What we found was something that was even stranger. We found the Pentagon had itself spread the myth of UFOs that had crashed and fallen and were now being hidden in Area 51 to distract attention from real, highly classified stealth jet programs. This myth that was spread within the Defense Department grew and infected the larger society. And the broader deep state conspiracy theory has gone from a quirky countercultural folklore to a cudgel the dominant political party uses against its opponents. It's a key plank in Trump's political rise and a way to distract from an increasing authoritarian power grab. A couple of weeks ago, this is long after we finished this project, but a couple of weeks ago, there was a podcast with Marco Rubio where he said he loves talking about UFOs with reporters because, quote, it's an extraordinarily effective diversionary tactic. Fact check me on that. He said that. I want to thank the National Press Club.
Yeah, so there's the
there is the way that this administration handles UFOs, I think, is slightly different than, it is different than the past administration. And we pointed this out when talking about the Pursue releases. The Biden administration has actually released more actual files when it was going than these Pursue releases have. They just didn't make a big public deal about it. They didn't, create a website and, have executive orders or announcements, and they didn't heavily publicize it like this administration has, effectively as a distraction. And I think that's why you're getting a lot of these people, these politicians, actually into the topic, is that it gives them a platform, to spread their message. People like Tim Burchett, a lot of these people would not have a national platform outside their own constituency if they didn't have these UAP topics to talk about. The whole reason they're putting on these nationwide shows is because they're talking about UFOs, and that gives them attention. People like Eric Burleson get the vast majority of their funds, their campaign donations, from out of state, actually. So it's beneficial for these people to use UFOs as a distraction. And
I probably would have never heard of Burchett or Burleson if not for
or Wacky Luna or
I have another thing that I was going to bring up, unless you wanted to say something more on that. Someone had, and I know we've kind of talked about this off and on to varying degrees for a while, but fair point, as someone said, what is a psychosocial perspective, and how does a psychosocial explanation for UFOs account for things like radar returns, which we've talked about before, right? And supposed hard evidence. And first thing I would say to that is I saw someone, it's been a year or two ago now, but had started using the term psychosocial model for this idea, as opposed to psychosocial hypothesis or something which would maybe postulate like a direct cause, like someone experienced a hallucination or a delusion about. But I think my perspective is that regardless of the more direct explanation for each instance or each sighting or case, right, that could be citing a classified military technology, or having a seizure in a temporal lobe, hallucination, or it's some kind of immediate, more biological cause, or point being, I think there's the key thing is understanding how people recall information and how they process what they're seeing and how they talk about the things they fear and they want to be true. And obviously that's not to claim that a psychosocial phenomenon is necessarily itself leaving a radar return. But of course, as we've, I think, talked a little bit about before, these, especially some of these old cases, right? Like radar systems from 30 years ago, I would imagine are as wonky as hell, right? That how could you trust anything but anyway, that is a mouthful. But what would be your kind of first?
I personally don't trust anything on radar prior to the 1970s, at the very least. Like, even when they came out in the 60s with reports on the old SAGE radar, SAGE, SAGE radar systems and whatnot, they pointed out how flawed the systems were, how they were just effectively garbage. Like, if there was a real object there, it would pick it up, but it also pick up all sorts of spurious targets, anomalous propagation and radar angels and all sorts of like crazy things. And and it makes sense. The electronic tech back in the 50s and 60s was not, it's vacuum tube stuff, it's old school. But so as far as psychosocial, so for me, I think it helps to kind of remember how UFO sightings kind of come in and are developed. And a researcher named Jenny Randall's kind of came up with these multiple stages of sightings. And so when you have a UFO sighting, stage one is essentially it's the stimulus. It's whatever causes that person, draws their attention, makes them look up and think there might be something in the sky. Now that stimulus could be all sorts of things. It could be the moon. It could be a plane. It could be a meteor. It could be Zork from the planet Reticulol. Who knows? It could be any of those things. That's not really relevant at that point. That's just what got that person's attention. This is before it actually turns into a UFO sighting. People see stimuli all the time without interpreting them as a UFO sighting. Like I can look at the sky, see something, and to me, I immediately, that's an airplane. Guy down the street looks up and he could think it's a UFO. Something turns into UFO sighting when that experience or that person interprets that stimulus in a way that is unusual enough for them to think it's like a UFO and like it can't be explained. That's kind of like the first part. And you can already see how somebody's psychosocial and cultural context and other things come into play. And just at the very beginning with how they decide that's a UFO sighting in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then you get the people that come in. You get the UFO investigators. You get the press that want to talk to you. They want to ask you questions. They might tell you about other cases. And as a witness, if you want your story to be heard, you've got to put it together in a cohesive way that kind of fits with other stories. So it makes sense that people don't immediately dismiss it and write it off. And that it comes, and it comes out in an entertaining kind of like cohesive way for people to hear. And so once the story gets published in the newspaper or in a book or whatever, it's been kind of heavily manipulated already by the various investigators that got involved. People start to, and just the time that has passed, people start to take all that other information they've been hearing after their sighting. Maybe they went and got a UFO book and read it. And so then they start to rethink about their sighting in the context of what they just learned after reading that UFO book. And they start to adjust their memory and adjust their sighting. And so by the time we get UFO stories that are in books or magazines, they're vastly different than the original sighting. And Jenny Randall's used a case example that she witnessed personally of what was initially a sighting of basically Venus that this couple saw out in the yard. Then the press got involved. Some UFO investigators got involved. By the time the story got published in UFO magazines and books, it turned into a possible abduction. There was potential landing traces because then they maybe it was UFO that landed. Well, let's go look to see if we can find something in the yard. Well, there's some sticks that got knocked over. Maybe.
And of course, when you find anything unusual, it's used as supposed verification of this thing, which you would not have looked for the evidence for if not for the report. And
And so because she was there for the whole process, she took the initial report before it got publicity, before these other UFO investigators got involved. She witnessed firsthand the kind of narrative development of this story from prosaic to pretty sensational. Yeah, and so knowing all of this, you got to understand that even if there are real objects out there that are potentially, even in the case of radar responses, right? Radar gets stuff all the time that pops up. There's millions of spurious targets that are always popping up on radar systems. They're usually just ignored because they have no reason to think there's anything to it.
Right.
So where the psychosocial factor comes in is if somebody thinks they saw something in that general area, and then one of these spurious targets that is probably just anomalous propagation or whatever pops up, like, well, somebody said they saw something. I'm seeing something on the radar. Now we got radar confirmation. But there's no radar confirmation. There's no direct tie between that visual target and what somebody's seeing on a radar screen.
Right.
So the point is that even though there could be real physical objects, the way we interpret things is largely psychosocial. The way things get turned into UFO sightings is psychosocial. And so this is the way we need to kind of look at things. This is why studying things like eyewitness testimony and the various, fallacies with that is important. Studying things like history, even studying things like pulp science fiction to understand the cultural context that people are bringing with them into the UFO topic when they see UFOs. All this stuff is important. And so we're not denying the potential physical reality of a potential sighting. That can still all be true. We're just looking at why people believe it's a sighting, how that sighting, the various cultural contexts involved, and all these other factors that come into play.
Yeah. And there's, clearly there's, as someone just mentioned in the chat a moment ago, right, that implication that I think I saw a UFO brings with it, all this other information about what that means, right? Both for me, as the witness, and what it means about, what a UFO is supposed to look like, quote unquote. And even just, for example, with with the transient stuff, if she was not trying to make this connection to the 1952 DC stuff, or we didn't have these stories about UFOs, right? We'd get, these small pinpoints of light and photographs and photographic plates, and have probably no interest in, in why it's there whatsoever, right? But when we have this idea about, well, there's could be some evidence for this, this UFO thing, then.
Honestly, Adam Frank points out in his article that why it's problematic to even call them transients in the first place. It's because you're bringing in prior into there that you believe there's some sort of object that was there and then it moved off and then it left. And as he points out, in many cases, that's just simply not true. These are going to be plate defects and other things that are actually there. And so you're better off calling them, they call them SPS, select POS1 features instead of transients, because it doesn't mean it's alien, right? That's kind of like you see that with the word UFO. To a lot of people in that mind, you say something's a UFO, they think that means it's alien, when really it just means it's unidentified. But the words you choose, are relevant because it frames how you're going to interpret something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's, and even in a sighting of what isn't a truly, a mysterious thing, like maybe a classified tech project, or there's still all those steps to encoding this event, trying to recall it for later when I want to tell somebody about it, and in the meantime, integrating the other things that I know about UFOs into my story and vice versa. And it's there's a lot of human variables within that whole process, which I think are, we clearly haven't had very much success in terms of studying the physical nature of UFOs, if they actually exist, in a physical way at all. So it really is a study of, just like, well, similar to other folklores, where it's, the stories and the word of mouth and how all these things happen. But
that's the problem with UFOs, right? It's not like a lot of science where we can like repeat an experiment and verify. UFO events are transient by their very nature, right? Like we can't like go back and like re-verify that a sighting kind of like happened. Like, so all we're kind of left with for the most part is, human testimony and what people have to say about their experience.
Yeah.
And so that's why, again, like you say, it's mostly, kind of almost a folkloric approach is a better way to look at the UFO topic. That's why some of my favorite UFO researchers are actually folklorists, like people like Eddie Ballard and like David Clark, for example. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, the whole. Sorry, were you going to say?
I was just going to say, it's just like, Carl Jung, like when people asked him about UFOs, like, and he pointed out whether or not they're physically real is not really relevant, like to like his interest in the topic. He's more interested in the human factors like involved in the sighting. They may or may not be real. Like he's not, disputing that. And that's one of the problems when people get mad when you use the word myth with like ufology, like, because they've got this pop culture idea of myth. That myth means it's false, it's fake, it's not real, right? But that's not like what actual myth means. And there's no doubt that UFOs are a living modern myth. It's
a living story. It
doesn't mean that all UFO sightings are bunk. It says nothing to that.
Yeah.
But it's still a living story that And it's one of the, and as Young pointed out, it's one of the kind of living myths that we've been fortunate enough to see, develop almost in our lifetime. I mean, not my lifetime, obviously, but in modern history, there's people still alive that basically saw the whole development of UFOs, like from now to present. So it's a unique opportunity to study and monitor it.
And I mean, if there were any decent evidence for this as kind of an objectively real phenomenon involving, whether it be craft from other galaxies or some kind of quote unquote interdimensional thing, whatever that, the evidence would not be such that when I look at it, I can't tell if it's a floating piece of dust, right? You would think there would be something. We have ring camera videos from all over the world showing meteors and tornadoes and earthquakes, but nothing that other than as Mick West would say, right, in that low information zone, because that's the only place that UFOs can live, is in that zone where you don't have enough information to explain what they actually are, right?
That's what that's what literally makes it a UFO. If you had enough information to explain it, then it wouldn't be unidentified in the first place. The very definition of UFO is in the low information zone to begin with.
And this
that Chelyabinsk or whatever it is meteor sighting that happened, decade or however long ago that was. Even back then, there was like dozens of like car cameras that picked it up. Other webcams like from buildings picked it up. I mean, there's literally dozens, if not hundreds, of recorded like video of that meteor coming in. But yet, sometimes people will claim something as big as a football stadium is hovering over a major city, and like one person saw it. Like nobody got it on video. And here's the thing: like I'm agnostic about this topic. I'm more than willing to look at evidence. If you've got scientific evidence that proves some of these things are extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or whatever, show me the evidence. I just have higher standards of evidence than the average UFO believer does.
Yeah. And I had, I was trying to pull it up now. I can't seem to find my bookmarks here but Diana Pasulka, who I have mixed feelings about in the first place, but she was on one of the other many podcasts that she does and was sharing the story from the Vatican about the flying nun who, the fact that this nun had flown from one part of the country to another was corroborated by multiple witnesses. And it's almost, to me, that seems almost like you're hurting your UFO case when you're arguing that, we're believing hundreds of or multiple witnesses that a nun flew across the country 100 years ago, and therefore that shouldn't make us even more suspect about using witness testimony to verify the existence, the objective reality of, unless she's arguing that nuns really do and have flown, which I don't know, maybe.
I think she probably is.
I'm not even sure, honestly. I don't know if she gets the dissonance there or if she's, I don't know, but
one of the arguments people have always made about people that try to integrate some of these more paranormal aspects in with UFOs is that they kind of point out that it kind of discredits, at least the attempt for UFOs to be more serious and scientific when you start including ghosts and poltergeist and flying nuns and everything else with them.
Right.
And what is your argument here? Are you saying it's the same phenomena somehow?
That was going to be what I was going to mention, right? Is that it's what even is a UFO or what's involved in UFOs depends almost completely on who you ask, right? Does it involve goblins or werewolves or not? And there's half of people seem to think so, right?
And this is why you get books like Passport to Magonia and other books that try and like tie the UFO lineage all the way back to ancient times with every sighting of a spook, goblin, fairy, or whatever, ghost light that people have seen. And in a sense, there's some logic there. The same kind of stimuli that lead people to have UFO sightings now almost certainly cause people to be confused about things back in the past. Yeah. And again, this is where that whole psychosocial aspect comes in. People tend to interpret things given the kind of technology context of the time. Right now, we see spaceships, right? Back in the 1890s, they saw airships, flying around. Back before that, people may have interpreted things as angels, ghosts, demon, who knows what else that people would see. So in a way,
yeah,
there may be people seeing the same things that are causing them to interpret it in an anomalous factor, but I don't think it's UFOs from space or wherever that people were seeing back in the time period.
Who was, I can't remember her name, but there's I know she's a psychologist or a therapist that's on that supposedly existing White House thing with Javi, and she had posted something to her. I can't. I commented on it. I can't seem to pull it up now, but it was this thing about UFOs, and she was kind of trying to figure out almost whether she was using the term if consciousness is involved in UFOs or not. And first of all, when you say is consciousness involved in UFOs, we're reliant totally on people's recollections and experience of. So I don't guess that she's meaning consciousness like in the kind of the old school way that I would have meant it, 30 years ago of you're conscious and aware, but almost maybe more of this kind of new age way of consciousness, like I'm summoning it in on some spiritual level, but the bigger point to me is that it struck me as kind of a way to figure out how you can please most parts of the base, right? Of like, oh, you got to get the people that are really into the woo. You got to also acknowledge the people that are into the channeling, and you got to get the nuts and bolts people. And it was just an interesting way to. I don't know why I can't find my
Bigelow seems to be big into that as well. The idea of consciousness being related to the UFO topic.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know if you're going to believe in things like psionics, like psychically calling into UFOs. Like, I guess you got to somehow tie in consciousness. Like, because otherwise, how does that even make sense? Like, that's the thing about CE5 that I always found so kind of silly is like, why would an alien being out there in space, wherever, be like just sitting around waiting to listen to some dude sending out messages from his brain out into the cosmos? Oh, we got you, buddy. We're going to come down. Like, they've got nothing better to do.
Not even that. We'll only come so close that you can take a really blurry photograph of us from a distance. But when you try to verify in any way that we were there, we'll take off, right?
But don't worry, Stephen Greer will pay a pilot to drop some flares off the ocean, so you can take a picture and claim that it worked.
Man.
Yeah, it's as you know, like there's not even really consciousness means something different to all sorts of people. Like it's not even like strictly defined in any way. So this attempt to me, it's almost kind of like bringing more woo into UFOs. You make this topic so ambiguous like that.
Yeah.
Like it's not even wrong. There's nothing to debunk. It's just like a hodgepodge of wackiness.
And unfortunately, I think a similar thing is true of like psychology and therapy. It's long kind of had a very close, rubbing shoulders with woo, right? There's been a lot of woo in therapy, and unfortunately it's still that way, and it probably always will to some degree or another. But I think it was just interesting that the way that she was using the term if consciousness is involved in UFOs. It was kind of, what do we really mean here? I guess the kind of that woo stuff was really what it kind of struck me as code for. But
maybe it's like the Traveler from Star Trek Next Generation, how they could travel even much faster than the ship. Like they could go billions of light years with the guy's mind. He's like, it's all about thought. Like it's not even, you don't even deal with all that stuff. Like you can just think. And Wesley Crusher, becomes the Traveler, becomes one of the Travelers, and makes away the ship with his mind.
And it gets to and that's maybe my personal bias, but I've never had any interest in like channeling and that kind of level of the woo of UFOs. You get to a certain point where I think you just kind of have to draw a line of, well, I don't have time for some of this is obvious nonsense, right? But some people, I guess, would argue that, you got to anything, right? Anything goes.
And, I used to be like that. Like for the first vast majority of my time as a UFO researcher, I just ignored like contactees. Like I even ignored a lot of abductees because I'm like, that's bunk. That's all nonsense. It's not even worth my time. I have better use of my time. But now that I've become more interested in the psychosocial, it's actually some of that weird stuff that's actually even more interesting. And so I started to spend more time on some of the contactees and like the channelers and stuff like that than I did in the past. In the past, I just wasn't even interested because I tried to approach this more nuts and bolts when I first kind of was in UFO. It was like, well, maybe there's some real spaceships, so let's be really scientific about this. Like, let's just dismiss the woo right off the bat.
Right.
Then I realized that's That's not the route to go. Psychosocial is the way.
Yeah. Well, and it's someone I've seen other people ask, and you'll see the question sometimes come up, and then people, once you kind of get towards what I think the actual answer is, they don't always like that. But I've heard people say, why do UFO photographs and descriptions from different eras seem to be different? Like they have different levels of technology, depending if it was the 50s versus the 2000s, or it's probably because either we're seeing things as we project them, right, or the hoaxes that use technology from the anyway, it doesn't seem all that mysterious if you accept that UFOs are primarily something that originate from people, right, and that therefore the reflections of that would
I mean, like I said, all UFO sightings are somebody's like an interpretation of
absolutely
that event, and people explain things using words and concepts and ideas that are familiar to them. And so, like I said, back in the day, airships were familiar to people, or at least that was coming on, kind of the conscious of the people at the time. Space travel, was what was coming out in the 50s after World War II and whatnot. And so people kind of thought of them as spaceships, so people need to look for ways to explain what they saw, and sometimes it's kind of people explain anomalous experiences as ineffable, like they just don't have words for them. And so they're trying to explain them with things that they know about. And so they explain them with current technology of the day.
Yeah. I mean, there's always been kind of that thing, right, of UFOs and Bigfoot, right? That idea of all these kind of woo things together, and
the UFOs brought the big feet to harvest the gold that they needed. They're just a slave race. At least I think I saw this in $6 Million Man or something. Or wait, no.
Right. Yeah. It's wild. It's wild for sure. Yeah. But it's I do wonder, if at any point in the near future, in the next 100 years or so, that we'll be at a place where people will kind of have a better understanding and recognition of I don't know how people deal with unusual experiences and all the stuff we add into it. And
100 years from now, we'll be living in the movie Idiocracy even more than we are already.
Yeah, right.
I'm not convinced. What's that? The class curse or whatever is like, you'll never know more about UFOs than you do now. So,
who's the UFO guy that says you aliens are from the future, right? And we're just visiting ourselves from the
Masters.
Future. Yeah,
extraterrestrial theory or whatever.
Yeah,
I met him. He we actually, when he first came out, we got him out in person. We flew him out to Oregon for the MUFON meeting. To present.
All right.
I've got like a bunch of swag of his, like glow in the dark cups with like his book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But it's again, it's not a new idea either. It's not even his idea. There's a guy named Mark Davenport who wrote a book.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Mark Davenport. I remember him. Yeah.
Time. And there's actually a movie I remember watching in the 90s, like back when I was in school. Like it was on the Sunday Sci-Fi Channel. Used to have their Sunday or Saturday movies or whatever. And one of the movies they had, that was the whole plot, is that the gray alien and the UFO was actually humans from the future, that it came back.
Okay.
It's a very old idea.
Yeah. I'd forgotten. Did Mark Davenport? He didn't stick around, I don't think, in UFOs, did he?
I don't think so.
I haven't heard anything. Forgotten all about him.
Yeah, I have his books over there somewhere. But
yeah. So the thing with the the White House counsel that isn't official, and the Bigelow podcast, and I remember a few weeks ago it was a tweet regarding his first episode, and it was something like, breaking news, Bigelow announces life after death or something. It was like, I don't know, it was weirdly phrased though, because he's always had that interest in, so I mean, I guess back to that same idea, right, of ghosts and goblins and life after death. And
yeah, I've got a copy of he had that essay contest,
the
consciousness studies essay contest for proving life after death. And they printed out this whole box set of books and they were giving them away for free. And so I they mailed me one, and so I've got it. I haven't really.
Did you read them? Were there just essays, or was there like research?
It's all the essays that were turned in for the competition, and I guess they even have audiobooks on Audible now for that you can listen to. But I don't remember who did the winning essay, but it's just it's like a 5-volume set, and it all fits inside this other box. And
I saw.
They spent some money on it, and they not only printed them for free, and then they shipped them for free, and so I wasn't gonna buy it, but I was like, hey, you want to send me one? I'll take it. And so they mailed me one.
Right on, man. Yeah. Well, that's really most of what I had on for tonight. I know Matt said he wasn't feeling too well, and I think Osnap said they're gonna try to jump back on with us next time. But you got anything else you want to try to hit on tonight, or? Let's see what else.
I recommend people go read that Adam Frank article on Big Think about the Vasco study, but no, nothing else that I can think of at the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get another Pursue release next week. Who knows? Probably not. It'll be another nothing. We still haven't got Eric Burleson spend all that time hyping up the MIT Lincoln Labs audio recording. And where is it, man? Where's the audio recording? We haven't. I think maybe they got it, realized it wasn't as cool as they were hoping.
Right. Decided to bury it. Yeah.
So I don't know.
I hear my pets are all starting to chime in. They're wanting my attention.
Demanding attention and treats.
Yeah. Well, good talking again, Jeff. We'll get back together again in a couple weeks if you're up for it, man.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, good deal with the new mic. So glad you got it working.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's got a button I can turn it off and on.
Okay, like but
stand like it came with this little stand, but like podcasters got the big old arms.
Yeah, those big arm things.
Give me one of those so I can be real professional here.
Right. Yeah. Right on. I always use this little ear thing that I've had for years now, but it's enough for my purposes, I guess. But,
well, I might need to get some headphones to use with it too, because otherwise it picks up the sound from my computer.
Right. Yeah.
And it's got a spot for a headphone on it, so like it doesn't do that. But
well, folks, thanks for hanging out with us again this evening. Every so often on Friday, we get together Friday evenings and talk a little bit about UFOs from a curious, critical perspective. And occasionally, you can hear my pets in the background, like you can now. So, thanks again, Jeff, and we'll see you and everybody next time.
Catch you guys later.
All right, bye, guys.